There's a word that comes to my mind when I think of the band Solstice, and the word is joy. There's something so joyful about everything associated with the band, as far as I can tell, well, at least most of it anyway. And so much of that joy is coming through on the Friends of Solstice Facebook page. To me, it's more than just nostalgia. It's an awareness that a journey that I think a lot of people had thought was over is far from over. The new album proves it, and some of the stories that are coming out on the Facebook page prove that too. So we thought it might be a little bit of fun to dig up some pictures, some of which have been seen on the Facebook page, some of which are yet to be seen, and talk to some of the guys who are part of the journey on stage and off stage, and talk to them about what the journey means to them. To be honest, we weren't sure what to expect. We need not have worried. My name's Martin Kielty. This is Solstice Show and Tell, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Back in those days, you know, we'd be lucky to sort of get on a bill supporting somebody, and people would turn up to see a bigger, better known band. And I mean, we used to get on support gigs for Dave Stops, didn't we, in Friars, and we supported Marillion a few times. But I mean, that thing that you're talking about, Martin, you know, that happened to us after you came along, Phil, was where where people would would come and be watching us, but they weren't there to see us. They'd come to see someone else. And then at a certain point, we were doing gigs, and people were turning up because they wanted to see us. So that everyone that was there had come there to see us. And I think that's very different, you know, to when you go to a gig and you're supporting another act, or even if you're in a covers band and you're just playing in a venue, and the punters couldn't give a shit whether you're good or you're not, or you're inspired. You know, when an audience turns up to see a band, to see you, that's very different to, you know, playing under any other circumstances. And that's the sort of cut-off for me.
That's a baptism of fire moment, though, isn't it? Because I remember the first time it happened to me, you know, like, what did all these people want? Oh my God, they're here to see us, me. And I had this sudden attack of a massive sense of responsibility. They've all paid money. I owe them something. And I didn't like it at all. You know,
it's scary, isn't it? I'll never forget when we very first headlined the Marquee. I think that's one of the most nervous I've ever been. And then I was thinking, fuck, you know, there's like, and we were thinking, is anyone going to turn up? And I was convinced, so who's going to turn up to see us? You know, I don't think we sold it out, but I think that we got a pretty healthy, you know, in the Marquee Club in London, I think we got, you know, like 3/4 full, and we were like, wow, I've never, you know, it's one of the biggest highs.
Yeah, it was always amazing and surprising to us, the sort of loyalty that people showed. And I think one of the things that I really didn't appreciate at the time was the support that we got from people around us. You know, the direct involvement. You know, when you think back to, obviously, Phil, the Smith brothers that you've mentioned, you know, all these other people,
Steve Jones, so many people, we never paid them. I mean, they just did it.
Well, no one got paid. You know, none of us ever got paid.
It all went back into the kitty to further the cause. But I think who really shoved it along was Guy Hewison, because he had the model from having worked in Marillion of what to do. And in fairness, like that first Scottish tour, he had the contacts book. You know, he knew the people, he knew the venues, he knew about like going the deal with Robin in Cane Park Hotel, that you could stay there if you played a gig. He'd been through the experience, so I do think he did a lot of the shoving.
And I think without Guy, it would have been a very different story, because he did spend hours, days on the phone, hustling up these gigs and tours and stuff. So he was key, certainly, to the way it panned out.
Yeah. It's interesting for me in that, you know, all the years playing in bands, and then the only time I ever made money out of the live music business was when I went backstage and started managing bands. And it wasn't a lot of money, and I actually tried to have a philosophy where it was all spread an equal number of ways. You know, everyone got the same amount of money because we were all meant to be on the same side. And the amount of musicians who didn't like that was rather strange, you know, but there was so much work, you know, that went invisible. And you began to realise that that's why, you know, if you've got the right people backstage, It works because it's meant to be invisible for the front stage guys, because they're supposed to be just concentrating on the music and the vibe and the attitude. In the same way as a lot of backstage people, I think, thought that, they didn't see how much energy it took to go on stage. A lot of guys on stage didn't see how much effort it took to just make sure that the right number of t-shirts at the right price to break even, making sure you get discounts available for that guy's going to buy 2 t-shirts if you give him a £5 off the second one. There's a lot of psychology going, and I always saw it as a form of art, separate from the form of art that happens on stage. But my bank account proves I was completely wrong about that. Still, it was a great experience. Let's pick another picture.
There's one here that is kind of referring more to, the crew, which we've just been talking about. So,
what are people pointing at?
Oh, that is no. That's just the finger up to someone taking the picture.
It's the wrong finger.
Well, that's the back of the Bedford TK during the first Scottish tour, because it's the only tour we did in that, and we all slept. You can kind of see all the blankets, etc., on the back there. We all slept up there. I just turned up on that tour uninvited. Well, yeah, I hitched from Bangor in North Wales up to Aberdeen to join up with that, because Guy organised it, and he said, "Oh no, there's not room." And I said, "Well, look, I was sure they needed one other person, because they just had like Brian, Guy doing the lights. There was no one spare for roading or anything, so I just turned up. That was a great tour. That was. It just sort of broke the mould to me, because then we've been on tour.
Yeah, I can't believe you hitched from Bangor, man.
Yeah. I set off. My dad dropped me off at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got up to Aberdeen about 3 in the morning the following day and fell asleep on the floor of Aberdeen railway station, and woke up with people queuing up at the ticket office all around me. And I waited I think it took you about 6 hours. And I just saw the TK coming through the city centre, waving down, and there was a lot of chins dropped to the floor. Like, what the fuck are you doing? I thought you might need a hand, and I was right.
Yeah, you were right, man.
I don't know if we're sharing that, but I put the other picture up of Mark playing with the piper on the border, because that happened when we'd finished on the way back down to England. I've had sort of experiences before and since then of like when you're people on the road in that freedom spirit, you just meet people and great things happen. And I remember like we all had a smoke with him, and there's that other picture of you dancing with Sue while they're playing and stuff, Andy. It was quite a moment. That it was sort of
incredible. I'd forgotten, about having a smoke with the piper. I mean, what the hell?
We had a pipe with him. And
a pipe with a smoker.
There was actually a picture of that, because I think Lisa Hosking took that picture.
So Lisa was on the tour as well then, was she?
Yeah. Well, she hitched up apparently with Tim Smith, and Tim disappeared, and Lisa ended up with us, and she came all the way back down with us. So that was on the way back, wasn't it?
So there's another guy that did a lot of stuff, Tim Smith. What was he doing? Merchandise, the mail ordering, the writing of letters to people.
I'll just say briefly back to Farthing Grove. When I moved in there, right, because Tim got a lease on that place in June, and then like him and Ant had bedrooms upstairs. This is in June '82. I lived under the stairs. I had a bed under the stairs.
Like Harry
and the front bit, right? And then Guy was spending so much time with the band. Guy came and lived on the sofa, and the front room was the office, So we were sticking bloody tapes together half the time, answering letters. That went on for like, 7-8 months. Till we got the house in Wolverton, and when Sandy joined the band, and Sandy, Jill, myself and Guy all rented that house there. But we lived that front room in that tiny little rabbit hutch of a place.
This is kind of one of the reasons that I appreciate that so much now, because that was like HQ, wasn't there? There was always an HQ with people working on behalf of the music, on behalf of the band, organising stuff, communicating with fans, getting it out there. Yeah. And the reason I appreciate it so much now is because, we don't have that now. It's me now. I spend hours and hours, basically all the time right now, just on the computer. Yeah, I'm writing music, I'm editing videos, but most of the time is communicating with people, speaking to people who are interested in booking the band, all that stuff, you know, selling t-shirts, all that stuff that you guys were doing back there. You know, I'm now attempting to do on my own because no fucker else is going to do it, right? But that makes me so appreciative and in awe, really, of what you guys were doing, just because you were into the music, you were into the community, you were into supporting it. I mean, that is bloody amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lifeblood. You know, it wasn't like wasn't just a sort of manifestation of one or two of us. I mean, I think at the time, Andy, you and I were kind of primarily the driving force musically, but
yeah,
I mean, there was, you know, that was kind of almost secondary, like you say, to this community of people that were sort of pushing it from underneath.
No, but I remember at the same time we'd come up to your flat, Mark, and I can remember some of the tunes that emerged in that same period of time. I remember Sunrise happening. It's like, wow, that's fucking brilliant. I remember just going at that time, and that's when, you know, they were just rolling out. Peace came out. You were working on that at the time. I think The Journey as well. I think all round about that period, end of 82 into the beginning of 83, it was, you'd be going up your flat and the two of you were working on, you know, there'd just be something else really amazing happening.
This is actually one of my fondest memories of that period is, you know, because, you know, I was around at your place, Mark, all the fucking time, man. You know, and we would sit into the small hours, you know, getting high, talking about, you know, analysing the latest Joni Mitchell album, you know, imagining how good we could make the music be, and kind of were just fully committed to that energy, you know, to producing stuff and talking about it, and that was they're wonderful memories to me.
Well, same, you know, and I mean, it evolved in it. I mean, even from back in the squat, apart from getting high and listening to music, we jammed all the fucking time.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you know, we would just, you know, you play two chords. Remember two chords? Brilliant, you know. And then I'd just play, and it would evolve. And a lot of the songs initially came from that, you know. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's not the only way of doing it, but it's a very organic way, isn't it?
Exactly. And we also spent a lot of time round at Margaret's. That was a jam central, wasn't it? But that was our whole vibe, wasn't it? It was jamming.
You know. Do you remember when we went up to Redlands, that commune in Winslow?
Winslow,
I ended up living there for a while, but later. But we went up and we organised. Well, you organised, I think, or at least I was sort of dragged along, and it was great. Had a great time. You know, it was like a big circle of people. And jamming was the thing, and drum circles was another thing I remember being heavily into. And you actually got me into that, you know, drumming and percussion, you know, hitting.
Yeah, we were living the hippie dream, you know, about 20 years too late.
Wait, we have one more picture to look at, haven't we?
Okay, guys.
Composite.
Really?
Oh,
did you do that, Phil?
I cheated. Yeah. I put a few photos up that really look like you in the kind of, a lot of you, either in the pleasure or the passion and intensity of the playing. So that top right one, I'm pretty sure that's got to be the two of you playing Brave New World, because you're on that little keyboard. You're both, Andy's high up the fretboard, so I reckon you're in the middle of all that mega soloing in the second half of Brave New World. And
yeah.
Probably. I'm just trying to work out what guitar that's that West tone I think I'm playing. So that would be 85, you know, that, if I'm right. The one on the left obviously is the Sugargold from earlier, but the one on the right with me above Mark there, that's that fucking West tone thing. God, I got an endorsement with them. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You know, when Ken and Barbie were in the band, and yeah, it was an awful guitar, really terrible. but you know, it was. I was so proud to have an endorsement. I would have played anything, really, you know. It's a lovely picture, man. And Sandy, she was the one, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, she really had something, didn't she? I mean, I think that was our most inspiring time, really.
Absolutely. It was her connection with the audience. I mean, Mark, you were always incredibly charismatic live and, had a great connection with the audience. But, Sandy as the kind of focal point and the singer, she had that sort of magic that is extremely rare, I mean, regardless of how good she is as a singer, I'm quite sure that that's the sort of lineup that, certainly at the time, that people connected with the most,
And it's a funny thing, actually, looking at this picture, what it makes me realise is that we weren't a terribly professional band at the time. I'm sure you probably are now, but at the time, it wasn't the case. I mean, and what you say about Sandy is true, but what she didn't do was to kind of come in and kind of take over the presentation of the show. So, because it was always this kind of vaguely shambolic, and there'd be awkward moments and we'd be even arguing about what song we were going to play next, or, shall I do the little dingly dangly thing? And then you just go into that, or, and Sandy would be kind of, and she sort of allowed that chaos to prevail.
I don't really recall it being, I don't think shambolic's the word. I would say casual in the same way, even if you're, maybe with the exception of Reading, where it did feel like people had 10,000 volts up their backside. But apart from that, I seem to think it was like we were always playing at Pear Tree Bridge. It was kind of casual. And I think Sandy would talk to people, but almost in the way as if she was sitting down having a pint with everyone in the audience, And she was witty, so she'd say funny things sometimes, but I think it was just a kind of naturalness, It wasn't. It wasn't effective. Yeah. It was about the music, and it was about having a good time,
Yeah.
And that music spoke all. I mean, you look at the things you're singing about. Now, I stand back. I was just recalling to myself how deep some of those songs have gone into my life. I'm sorry to get all kind of deep and profound, but the things you're singing about, they affected my life for years afterwards. You might have just tossed these lyrics off in 5 minutes, but that's the energy that's coming out. So there might be this casual way of putting it across, but it's amazing stuff.
There's 6 people in that image, and they're all maybe, if you were watching the band can't see that because they're all playing the song. But if I was watching the band on the stage, I can catch all those 6 expressions. And what I'm seeing in those 6 expressions are people lost in the vibe of the moment they're creating. Absolutely. So there's that 7th person there, isn't there? There's 6 guys on stage. There's the 7th thing that's the energy between the band and the audience. And that cannot be synthesized. And that's what I think, coming back round again to the amount of joy that is reflected on the Facebook page. You see it there. As you say, there's nobody trying to take centre stage, make it all about them. Everyone's lost in the moment, and hopefully the audience are as well. It's so difficult to explain to people who don't understand how to feel that way, but if you do, you'll get it.
Yeah, I think actually you've hit the nail on the head there, Martin. It is a thing that is rare. It certainly was then, and probably I'm sure it still is now, that it wasn't about any one thing. I mean, I think when you've got a group of people, sorry, I'm dominated. So this is a thing that I'm particularly into at the moment is, when you've got, because I'm a classical musician and I play Baroque violin and we play in Baroque ensembles. And the great thing about playing in a Baroque ensemble is that everyone is a key element in the, rather than, if you play in a modern orchestra and you might be, halfway back in the first violins and if you stop playing, no one notices. Yeah. It doesn't make any difference. But, and the thing about Solstice was that it wasn't about a sort of a bigger version of Marc Elton or a big version of Sandy Lee. It was all about the bigger, probably about the only thing I've ever done, actually, that was literally about the bigger picture.
There are so many great ideas that have come out in the last 2 hours. Something like, as I say, we've talked around the photos, we've talked through the photos, and I know there's more stories to come
It's been great, man. Yeah, it's been. I mean, I you know, this is another benefit of what's happening is that we're talking to each other. You know, we're reconnecting the band, the old members of the band, friends of the band. You know, that's been something incredible about the Friends of Solstice thing. Foss. So it's just lovely to spend an hour chatting with you guys, man. You know, so that's beautiful.
Yeah, well, fair play to you, Andy, you know, for keeping it going, and credit to you for it. And, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, I just can't let it go, man. I cannot let it go. And the new album I'm pleased with it.
Lovely, man. Lovely.
You know, I'm pleased with it, and thanks. And feel like some of that energy is coming back again, and it's rooted in what we did together 40 years ago.